children, beasts unknown.
Third phase.
Welcome back to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. Of course, I am your host, Dr. J. Co-hosting with me live in London, of course, is Johnny Webb, where it happens to be 3 a.m. As usual, we have an awesome show for you today, but today is extra special because we have someone who's always on top of UFO news. Someone who literally you can have on a week apart, and literally the show would end with never having enough time and, of course, so much new information. And that happens to be, of course, the one and only Linda Moulton Howe. Ms. Howe, welcome to the show.
Dr. J, thanks for having me on, and thank you for that introduction. There is so much happening, both in Earth mysteries and the environment and the solar system around our planet now, that I think it could take 20 of us working 24 hours around the clock to keep up with what's happening now.
You're absolutely right. And let me spit out these three pieces of UFO news, and then we got to go into something really important. And if you want to comment on these, by all means, because these all relate to important stuff, things that you've been working on. This does not surprise me, first of all. This first one. NASA, where is it? Here we go. UFO orbs captured on NASA's space station video. And of course, go figure, NASA shuts it off. How often do you see this happening? I've seen it at least every other month, at minimum 3 months.
And one of the interesting things is that when there is somebody on the web at YouTube who posts a video because they are devoting their life to watching the ISS feed and getting a clip of something and putting it up, what is often the first attack that it is a CGI photo ploy and that it's not real. And that we now are in a very bizarre world digitally where those of us who are simply trying to learn facts and report them because we have governments that are not reporting anything to us, that because it is the digital age, we now have to do reality checks on every single thing that makes it to YouTube because of this attack.
You're absolutely right. One thing that scares me is before it was just attack the story, attack the person, but now it's like, nope, CGI. That's the first thing. You're absolutely right. This other story, I know you didn't. I know this doesn't surprise you because you are always on top of the news and you receive a lot of reports. UFO spotters shocked as the number of UFOs, alien craft sightings has doubled in the last month of June 2015. This comes out of the Mirror in the UK. You're not surprised by that, are you? I'm not. Something's got to be happening, and I've just been blown away paying attention to the news. Literally, when we give the news report, UFO news at the beginning of the show, at how many there are to choose from lately.
Well, and the phenomena has had cycles ever since it really burst on the scene in World War II with the Foo Fighters. And why is that? Why is it that there are months in which I could say I'm expecting an animal mutilation report, a half-cat report, human abductions to spike, or that people are seeing more and more strange things in the sky? And it is the cyclic nature that has always been puzzling, but people have noted it for decades. And in England, I think England was reporting about a big flare-up of UFOs just about 2 years ago. And so they keep more, perhaps they're keeping more track on the records of sightings because it is an island nation, and we are about 3,000 miles long, and from Canada to Mexico, there aren't many news operations that are reporting about UFO news. More so, I think, in the UK.
Exactly, and is this a repeat of the golden era following World War II after we set off the nuclear weapons and the flurry of UFOs started coming in? I mean, that's what I'm at least gathering from this.
Well, I personally think going all the way back to 79 when I started investigating the animal mutilation mystery around the world, up to right now we're speaking on July 7th, 2015, and in those 36 years, I would say that there have been these cyclic periods where everyone was saying it's going to break. We're going to, the non-humans themselves, they're going to fill the skies and they're going to crack this open, whether the governments do anything or not. And those sorts of sensations have come, I think now, with a perspective of 36 years, that there is something that is more intense now than I have felt in a long time. But I don't put it in the category right now, of the sky filling or this year the UFO landing on the White House lawn syndrome. I don't think it's going to happen right now, but maybe in another year that we are finally going to get that 3-inch headline that we are not alone in this universe. There will be a confirmation of other life. I don't care if it's microbes on Mars or something swimming in Europa. We're going to have that break. And once that happens, Dr. J, that's all we need is that 3-inch headline around the world and in every iPhone and computer. And from that moment forward, the world will never be the same again, because everyone will have permission to tell what's actually happening to them, because we can't live in a world where everybody is criticized and CGI rocks are thrown at them because they are trying to report something that has been so firmly denied by governments. That's why I feel that we are going to have some kind of a breakthrough on that headline, "We're not alone in the universe."
Exactly, and you're absolutely right. Part of me thinks that this might actually be the time. I remember when I started paying attention in the 80s, I always thought the 40th anniversary would be it. Then after that simulcast of Soviet Union and America with those two guys, Falcon and Condor, I thought that was going to be it. Then, of course, the Roswell report came out. And there's just been all these times when I thought this was it. But really, I'm more hopeful about now than ever. And part of this goes back to what we talked about a couple months ago, which leads into the next topic. When you came on and you talked about John Burroughs and Penniston, where the UK finally, through their I believe it was the Condon report, finally recognized that something happened, a UFO landing that affected these two gentlemen, was the first time we had de facto disclosure. And I think that really set the ball rolling and set the tone for the rest of the world. And I know you have some amazing new info on this.
Well, yes, and what you're referring to, that Condon report, as it was discussed in the MOD by, there's two groups and factions that do investigations in the MOD related to what they call unidentified aerial phenomena, DI-55 and DI-52. And both of those agencies were involved in investigations of non-ionizing radiation that is defined in a 460-some page report that no one knew anything about, literally, until 2010 to 11. John Burroughs and Penniston and I went with the Ancient Aliens production television crew to England for the December 2010 35th anniversary, or 30th anniversary of the December 26 to 28, 1980 phenomena that took place at what was then NATO's largest air base in Europe. And what no one was supposed to know at the time is that there were nuclear tactical instruments in both sides, the Bentwaters and on the Woodbridge side. So it was a sensitive base, and the very fact that over 72 hours, starting around midnight, December 26th, to after midnight, to when the sun was coming up on December 28th, many people were exposed to something extraordinary, high strangeness in the Rendlesham Forest. And on the first night, it was John Burroughs, who was an airman. He was with Jim Penniston, who was a staff sergeant and was seasoned in investigating airplane crashes, and another young airman named Ed Kavansak. And Ed Kavansak was assigned to stay with their truck when they got to a point in the road that was too bumpy and frozen in the December cold winter night for them to proceed with the truck. And so Burroughs and Penniston got out, And when we were in England shooting for Ancient Aliens, they demonstrated how they started trying to run through the thick, tall forest, many trees, 2 and 3 feet only, all of the trunks so close together. And they were showing how they were trying to run after Christmas tree colored lights, red, blue, yellow, orange, and that as they ran, the lights seemed to be close and then far away and close and then far away, and that how they fell. And the falling was because all of that land in that forest, in that area where they were showing us, goes in rolling hills, very up and down berms, as the English would call it. So it was to them shocking that the lights could move so quickly, and they were trying, but as humans, they could not go through the forest and keep up with the lights. And all of this comes to a moment that summarizes the mystery of so many people who experienced all kinds of strange interactions in those 72 hours, and that is that Peniston remembers getting to a point in the forest as they were running where there is a gigantic flash of light, white light, and in his mind, he associates the sudden appearance of a black, glassy, triangular craft approximately 7 to 9 feet long, seemingly suspended above the ground by what he thought was light. And at the same time that Peniston remembers that, John Burroughs remembered running after the lights, and he doesn't remember a thing about the black glassy triangle, not much about the bright light. And Peniston is aware, becomes aware, says that he had no idea where John was, but that he walked around this black glassy craft, dragging his fingers along the surface, realizing that it was warmer than the very cold winter humid air, and that when he got up to the front vertex of the triangular craft, that there were raised symbols. He could feel them with his fingers. He compared it to touching Braille. And as soon as his fingers touched those raised symbols at the front of this black glassy object that had lights moving underneath the skin of it, so to speak, his mind was filled with zeros and ones and telepathic information that tied the craft, the blast of light, and what he was experiencing to time travelers that he estimated came from 40,000 years in the future on a desperate effort to keep surviving because the civilization had run into some kind of a problem, and they were coming back to this, what would have then been the 20th century, in order to gather genetic material to use, quote unquote, as band-aids to keep, is it us? Is it something else in a future alive? Now that is Jim Peniston's experience. John Burroughs was right next to him in the forest. They were right together running. John doesn't have any experience like that, but he does remember blue lights, amid orange and white lights, but the blue lights, they have haunted him since that night. And when we have done half a dozen or a dozen hypnosis sessions trying to break through the blocks in John Burroughs' mind about what happened, he can't get there, and every time it is the blue lights. He talks about how the blue lights come into his mind under hypnosis and block him from going forward, block him from seeing, block him from remembering. And now I've laid the stage very specifically for now explaining to the audience what Project Condon in all of its 460-some pages is about. It even references in an Appendix F, as in Frank, on page F4, after spending all kinds of graphs and scientific reports about unidentified aerial phenomena radiation that the MODs DI-55 and 52 had been studying. It's a very scientific paper, It was not designed for the public. It's very difficult to read. It does have many graphics and many summaries about the impact that non-ionizing, now non-ionizing gets you up to ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays. Those are ionizing. They tear apart cell structures. Those are heavy-duty radiation from bombs or gamma rays from the cosmic universe. When you come down below UV, you come into the areas of what are called non-ionizing radiation, and there is a very specific area between microwave and infrared that is called terahertz. And interestingly enough, those frequencies are also what are used in the scanners in airports and were very controversial when those scanners started being introduced into airports, because there were some points of view in the scientific community that humans should not be exposed to terahertz frequencies, even though it's non-ionizing. But the airports and the Homeland Security and the government and everybody assured everyone that exposure would be so short that it would not cause damage. Now, where does this damage issue come in? In the Condon report, which is technically a number report about unidentified aerial phenomena, the UK has started for some time now using the acronym UAP, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, changing from the American UFO from the 1947 period when it started. But they are essentially the same thing. They are craft, unidentified craft, and unidentified beings, I'm going to say intelligences associated with this unidentified aerial phenomena, and that the report confirms over and over again and even puts it in the context of what happened in Rendlesham Forest, that this unidentified aerial phenomena specific frequency of non-ionizing radiation can manipulate human minds to see something that is not there and can damage human tissue, including the heart and the eyes. And this is the first report that any of us know that, for reasons unknown, another mystery, it was classified UK eyes only, very highly classified in the UK MOD. And in 2006, and no one has ever explained why or how, it was quietly under the radar, declassified, but none of us knew anything about it until after we got back from that England trip. So that was, I think the earliest we heard anything about this was 2011, 2012. And it really became relevant to John Burroughs because we got back on New Year's Day of 2012 from the Ancient Alien shoot. And within 3 to 4 weeks after return, John Burroughs became very ill. And that was his first round with doctors in Phoenix, where he lived at the time, and they were completely baffled about why were his lungs taking in liquid, and he was having heart fibrillations, and he was really, really in serious trouble. And doctors got him sort of, I'm going to say, restored from the first cycle of attack, but it didn't end. And through 2012 into 2013, John Burroughs was going downhill. And the interesting part about this, keeping the Project Condon unidentified aerial phenomena, non-ionizing radiation in your mind that can damage human hearts and eyes and manipulate human minds, that the civilian doctors could not understand how a guy, he's 55 this month, so this is going back about when he was a little after 50, 51, 52. They couldn't understand how a man who was essentially was strong, was in relatively good health, did not have any signs of any what would be called congenital heart disease, and yet his heart was the organ that was so affected in these cycles of attacks that he was having. And they were running all kinds of tests, doing all kinds of things, and finally, there's a lot of backstory that I can't go into for complex reasons.
Moon. Third phase of moon.